Abdul Hamid's story is the human centerpiece of Asal Uttar because it brings the scale of armored warfare down to one soldier, one weapon, and a set of decisions made under extreme danger. Company Quartermaster Havildar Abdul Hamid served with 4 Grenadiers, an Indian infantry battalion holding part of the defensive zone near Asal Uttar. He became famous for engaging Pakistani tanks with a recoilless rifle mounted on a jeep, a weapon far smaller and more fragile than the Pattons moving through the battlefield. His actions became legendary in India, and he was posthumously awarded the Param Vir Chakra, India's highest military decoration for valor. But the value of his story is not only heroic memory, it is tactical reality. If you would like to move beyond the podcast, you can see my available books at militaryauthor.me. And at trackpads.com, you will find magazines and galleries with hundreds of thousands of photos and videos to explore. A recoilless rifle was not a tank in miniature. It was an anti-tank weapon designed to fire a powerful round without the heavy recoil that would normally require a much larger gun carriage. Mounting such a weapon on a jeep gave mobility, but it did not give protection. The crew could move, hide, fire, and shift position, but they were exposed to machine gun fire, shell fragments, artillery, and tank guns. Against a heavy tank, the weapon demanded nerve and tactical skill. The crew had to get into a useful position, wait until the target presented a vulnerable aspect, fire accurately, and then move before the enemy identified the source. It was a contest of concealment and timing against steel and firepower. Abdul Hamid's battalion, 4 Grenadiers, was part of the infantry shield that made the Asal Uttar defense work. The battalion's role was not glamorous in the way tank battles are often remembered, but it was essential. Infantry positions protected the defensive box, watched likely approaches, and helped prevent Pakistani armor from moving freely through the villages and fields. The men of 4 Grenadiers had to hold under the pressure of an armored attack, knowing that if tanks broke through unsupported positions, the line could unravel. In that setting, an anti-tank weapon was more than a piece of equipment. It was one of the tools that allowed infantry to stand its ground when heavy armor came close. The famous accounts of Abdul Hamid's action vary in detail, especially in the exact number of tanks credited to him and the timing of individual engagements. That is not unusual in battle, where smoke, fear, multiple weapons, and later memory often make precise accounting difficult. What is firmly established is that he engaged enemy tanks with exceptional courage and tactical effect, and that his actions became one of the defining stories of the battle. It is important not to turn that into invented dialogue or a scene we cannot prove. The truth is strong enough. A lightly protected jeep-mounted weapon, used by a determined soldier in the right terrain, could threaten tanks that seemed far more powerful in ordinary comparison. The terrain made his weapon more dangerous than it would have been in open ground. Around Asal Uttar, sugarcane, village edges, trees, and broken lines of sight gave anti-tank teams places to hide. Flooded or soft areas and mines slowed armored movement and made tanks more predictable. A Patton moving fast across open country would be very difficult for a small anti-tank team to handle. A Patton slowed, turning, exposed from the flank, or separated from infantry support, presented a different problem. Abdul Hamid's courage mattered because he took advantage of those moments. The battlefield had been shaped by engineers and commanders, but it still required individuals to act when the opportunity appeared. This is where his story fits the broader teaching purpose of Asal Uttar. The battle was not won by one man alone, and saying so would distort the combined arms truth. But combined arms does not erase individual action. It creates the conditions in which individual action can matter. Mines and flooding helped slow the tanks. Infantry held the ground. Artillery and Indian armor disrupted the attack. Within that system, Abdul Hamid's anti-tank work struck at vulnerable moments and strengthened the defense. The relationship between system and soldier is essential. Armies create plans, but plans become real only through people who fire the weapon, hold the position, carry the ammunition, repair the vehicle, or stay at the observation post under fire. The jeep-mounted recoilless rifle also shows how anti-tank defense had changed by the mid-20th century. Early tanks in the First World War were vulnerable to artillery, mechanical failure, and close assault, but by 1965, armored vehicles were far more capable. At the same time, infantry anti-tank weapons had also evolved. A foot soldier or small vehicle crew could possess a weapon that, used correctly, could destroy or disable a tank. This did not make infantry invincible, and it did not make tanks obsolete. It made close coordination more important. Tanks needed infantry to clear suspected anti-tank teams, artillery to suppress them, and reconnaissance to detect where they might be waiting. Separated tanks could become vulnerable to men they might otherwise have overawed. Abdul Hamid's actions are often remembered as a David and Goliath story, but that phrase can be misleading if it reduces the battle to legend alone. He was not defeating armor through symbolism. He was exploiting a real tactical vulnerability in a real defensive battle. The Pattons were dangerous machines, but they were not invulnerable. In the Asal Uttar environment, where movement was slowed and visibility restricted, small anti-tank teams could have moments of extraordinary leverage. The courage lay not in ignoring danger, but in staying close enough to use the weapon effectively despite danger. That distinction matters. Real battlefield courage is not theatrical fearlessness. It is disciplined action, while fear has every reason to exist. The psychological effect of such anti-tank action could be powerful. Tank crews advancing through a defended zone already had to worry about mines, wet ground, artillery, Indian tanks, and uncertain routes. When vehicles were knocked out by hidden anti-tank weapons, the sense of being surrounded by unseen danger deepened. Commanders had to wonder whether every field edge concealed another gun. Crews might hesitate before moving past crops or village corners. Supporting infantry might move more cautiously. These reactions slowed the attack further, and every delay strengthened the defender's hand. A small weapon, used effectively, could therefore influence not only the tank it hit, but the confidence of the formation behind it. His death also reminds us that heroism in battle is not an ornament added after the fact. Abdul Hamid was killed in the fighting, and the decoration awarded to him came after his life had been lost. The cost should remain visible. In many national stories, heroic figures can become almost untouchable icons, their humanity flattened into a statue or schoolbook image. A serious account should preserve both the honor and the loss. He was a soldier doing a specific job in a specific defensive system, and that job placed him in lethal danger. The meaning of his courage comes partly from the fact that it was not safe, not abstract, and not separate from the suffering of the battlefield around him. The legend of Abdul Hamid grew because his actions met a deep need in the memory of the battle. Asal Uttar produced images of destroyed Pattons and stories of a technologically stronger thrust being stopped by preparation and nerve. Abdul Hamid personified that larger story. He represented the infantryman facing armor, the smaller weapon defeating the larger machine, and the defender using ground and timing against apparent superiority. Yet the legend remained rooted in tactical truth. The battle really did create moments where separated or slowed tanks became vulnerable. Anti-tank weapons really did matter. Individual courage really did help hold the defensive box. The myth grew because it had genuine battlefield soil beneath it. His story also helps guard against the opposite mistake, treating armored warfare as a purely mechanical contest. Tanks, guns, radios, and engines matter, but machines are used by people under stress. A tank can be poorly supported. A gunner can wait for the right shot. An infantry platoon can hold long enough for artillery to arrive, and a commander can misread a withdrawal as collapse. Abdul Hamid's action makes the listener remember the human scale inside the operational scale. The road to the BS, the Pakistani armored plan, the Indian defensive box, and the wider 1965 war, all narrowed at moments into one man behind a weapon, watching tanks come through the fields. Abdul Hamid matters because he shows how legend and military education can meet without cheapening either one. His courage deserves remembrance, but it becomes more meaningful when understood tactically. He was not a magical exception to the rules of armored warfare. He was an example of those rules at work. Tanks need support. Terrain shapes vulnerability. Concealed anti-tank weapons can punish slowed armor. And individual discipline can influence a larger battle when the defensive system gives it a chance. In the story of Asal Uttar, his name stands for more than bravery alone. It stands for the moment when a powerful armored thrust discovered that in close country, against prepared defenders, even the strongest machines could be stopped by human nerve joined to battlefield intelligence.
You've been listening to Famous Tank Battles. These battles were never just about machines. They were about doctrine, terrain, firepower, logistics, and the hard problem of turning shock into victory. For more military history writing and books, visit militaryauthor.me. And for magazines, podcasts, and a massive archive of military photos and video, visit trackpads.com. Thanks for listening.